It's actually a great combination here. Dina represents obviously one of the sponsoring financial services firms. New York Life has been a member of the lab for many years, one of the great contributors, and Dina has been involved herself for some time and is passionate, and you'll hear firsthand kind of how New York Life thinks about the lab. And similarly, Marina is the president of Houso, who was one of the startups that went through our 2023 program. So still very active in the program and has some great stories to tell around how it impacted Houso, that the lab process, and she'll have some good advice as all of you are thinking about possibly applying here. So again, appreciate you joining and considering the lab. It's really it's a fantastic program, and I think you'll see some of that come to life as we get into a little bit more detail today. We are going to record this so that we can post for anybody who wasn't able to make the live session. So just be aware, we'll have some open question towards the latter part of the call, and obviously anything confidential. If you're not comfortable being on a recorded call, now would be the time to drop off, or we can connect separately. But for awareness, and yeah, let me jump right into it. So that's a little bit of intros of a couple of us who will give you some perspectives today. The FinTech Innovation Lab, what is it? And you've probably figured out much of this by now. You found your way into this discussion. Really, it's a program, again, running for 14 years now, targeted at select early and growth stage companies who are building leading edge frontier technology products focused for the financial services industry, banking, capital markets, insurance. The participants of the FinTech Innovation Lab include a number of executives from top financial services firms. I'll show you the list in a few minutes here, as well as venture capital firms, various investors. It's quite an impressive array of people who are involved and very engaged in the program. And I think, for you'll hear probably more from Dina, but this is a great way for these large institutions to stay out in front of what's happening, the ideas that all of you are bringing into the market. It's a 3-month program, and you would work. We select 10 startups to participate, who work directly with the institutions to test and refine your product. Product market fit is, of course, a big focus, validating that, developing relationships, very senior relationships at these in FSIs, who are ultimately, presumably, targets, potential sales targets, customers, and dedicated mentorship and guidance. So I'll click down a little bit more on those as we go, but a little bit of the history over the years. Now got over 100 alumni companies, and they've raised, at our last count, in the range of $2.6 billion. 26 of those companies have been acquired, and of those who are still active, 85% are still up and running and actively growing. Proof of concepts, we put the number here because that is kind of one of the key aspects of the program. As you go through the interactions with the financial services institutions, the outcome of that often is a proof of concept, and of course that then leads to possible full sale and contract. But proof of concepts, you can get a sense. Typically the participants would engage in at least 2 or 3 proof of concepts at these marquee institutions. So, and over 3,000 jobs created from the program. You get a little flavor of some of the notable alums at the bottom there. Some of these names you may be familiar with, and others, actually we'll hear about Houso more in a minute. Okay, I'm going to try to quickly move through just a little bit more on the background. Some of this, be self-explanatory, and then try to head off a few questions and then get into the live discussion in just a bit. But I alluded to the financial services institutions who are involved, and you can see the list on the left. Clearly, this is a who's who in the financial services industry. Just a tremendous set of sponsors, and the VCs on the right. The program itself is not so focused on selling or fundraising, although the relationships that you build through the program would certainly a active lead into that as you go. So what do participants receive? What's the experience from the selected startups? Mentorship from the financial institutions that were just on the previous page on the left. Typically 4 to 6. There's a matching process that we go through based on interest of the financial institutions and the specific focus areas of your company. So we match up with relevant partners there, as well as insurers, and opportunity to really test your pitch, your value proposition, get into some beta testing, providing feedback from senior executives. Essentially, the chaperone is the term we use for the financial services institutions, is really your guide. And of course, from the inside of these FSIs, they know who the relevant buyers are and who to make the introductions to. So it's a guide rather than, of course, you trying to call in through your network or so it's a huge accelerant value, I think, from that respect. We talked about the POCs. A couple of other aspects that I'll click down on more here is participation in our leadership program, as well as direct engagement with the mentor network. There's no fee to apply either if you hadn't picked that up. But just to go into the leadership program a bit more deeply. Within the 12-week process, there are a number of sessions that are set up with, in a couple of examples, last year's class had time with Larry Fink and had a chance to interact with Larry as well as Henry Kravis. So you're getting very senior leaders in the industry having discussions with the leaders of your company that are very tailored to how they think about engaging the FinTech community, the ecosystem, and some fantastic discussions there. There's a variety of different panels around how do the banks or the insurers think about engaging in a proof of concept. What do you need to do as a small startup with a great idea? What are the questions they're going to ask and the requirements to have? So just direct firsthand experience. How do you navigate procurement, which is a great and important topic, clearly. There's also a really good program around regulators and compliance, including a trip to DC to meet with some of the organizations you'll see at the bottom, as well as others in New York. So this is often one of the, while it may not sound like the necessarily the most interesting on the surface, huge insights come out of these sessions that are obviously very valuable in the highly regulated environment that we're working in. Mentor network. Again, these are very experienced investors, titans of Wall Street technology, of really good cross-section of individuals who are quite engaged throughout the program. And you would expect to have time with multiple of these individuals for coaching. Felix is a great example of somebody who's been a executive in residence, as we call this group, for some time, and actually jumped in to play a leadership role in one of the startups from the program 2 years ago. So, very hands-on group of people who just have so much experience to bring to your company. Who should apply? Obviously, tech companies, startups, emerging, focused in the fintech space. I would say, though, we often have participants who are successful and who join the program who didn't necessarily start with a fintech focus. So, maybe focused in another industry, but you realize that you've actually got something that's very relevant into the FSI community and clients. And so we're actually quite open. We put some things here just to give you a sense of typically, the types of companies that are attracted to and apply to the lab. But again, if you think you've got value kind of in this context, we'd welcome to have the discussion and look at an application. So we do typically recommend that you have a product that's demoable, something is there, at least a beta version, because then it just makes the discussions more tangible and positions you to jump right into a next step and accelerate. There's program centered around New York. It's a hybrid program, so certainly many of the companies are not based in New York, but over the course of the 12 weeks, we try to set it up so that there's activities that are in person in the beginning, towards the end, and a little bit in the middle. So, but again, it's okay if you're not anchored in New York for 12 weeks straight. In terms of just maturity of where you are, we typically see companies from seed to Series B. So, relatively early stage, but again, fairly open-minded. And then I think this is getting towards the last of my quick dump here. In terms of the themes and what we're looking for in the FinTech Innovation Lab, this varies, of course, over the course of time. And each year, we've just kind of wrapped and put a bow on the 2023 class. So as we get into 2024, we do a session with all of the institutions, the FSIs, and take their input. What do they want? What's important to them? What are they interested in? Where are they looking for innovation? Some of these topics, probably no surprise, generative AI, and certainly how so, which Marina will talk in a bit, is a core data play, synthetic data with a tie-in and enablement dimension to generative AI. We have cybersecurity startups in the mix, insurtechs, certainly in terms of enterprise operations. I know that's quite a broad term, but we know that in the industry, cost reduction is a major focus right now. Certainly, digital client engagement, payments. Again, there's more, and you don't feel limited if you don't fit squarely into one of these, but it gives you a sense of what's top of mind for the companies that are involved. I am going to put a wrap on my part, and then we'll move into some Q&A with my friends here. But just the broad stroke dates for the program. Applications, of course, are open now, and we're looking to get those in over the course of this month, and really by end of November to have the application window closed so that we can go into then the next step of the process, which is looking for who are the right fits. The companies themselves, the financial services institutions, do the scoring, and then the matchmaking kind of comes post that. That happens and culminates in a demo day, which is in February, and then the program actually kicks off in April and runs about 3 months. So hopefully that headed off a number of questions, and then we'll open up for more questions in a little bit. But with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let's have Marina and Dina, if you all would maybe do a quick introduction to yourselves and your roles, and perhaps also you can comment on the lab and your experience and what you're kind of we're looking to and the value that you have gotten out of it.
Marina, why don't you go first?
All right, sure, I'll go. Hi, it's great to be with you all today. My name is Marina Carricker, and I'm the president of Howso. We were actually called Dive Plane during the program and have since done a big rebrand. But Howso is an explainable AI company. We have built a novel, understandable AI engine, which is a pretty broad offering, but in the context of the lab, we were focused entirely on the go-to-market for one of our offerings. And that, as Steve mentioned, is our synthetic data product. So, you know, Steve sort of opened the door to general reflections on the program, and it's honestly, it's hard. I think it would be impossible to overstate how impactful and important our participation in the program has been for our trajectory. It's a huge time commitment, but it has been an absolute game changer for us. It allowed our team to make enormous progress in a really relatively short amount of time to refine our product and our offering to better meet the needs of financial services institutions. And again, it's a heavy lift to participate well in the program, but you know, we're months out from the program wrapping up, and we are still continuing to really reap the benefits of it. I did a quick check before jumping on. Of the next 5 POCs we have teed up to start, 4 of them have some connection to the lab. So it has just really been an accelerant for us.
Yeah, so nice to see everyone. Dina Samra. So I'm representing New York Life, so massive life insurance company and asset manager. So New York Life Ventures is the corporate VC arm of New York Life. We kind of have 2 main focuses. One is in investing in startups. So obviously we deploy capital. Typically it's $1 to $5 million check sizes. Seed through Series C tends to be kind of our sweet spot, and we focus on areas such as InsurTech, FinTech, enterprise software, with adjacencies in digital healthcare and PropTech, given the fact that we are a large asset manager. And so that's kind of one element of what we do. The second element of what New York Life Ventures does is business development, which is where I sit. And business development is really focused on identifying the gaps and challenges that our business might have, and then going out into the world and trying to find startups that can help meet those specific needs. So the business development team kind of takes the role of being able to shepherd the startup through the piloting and POC process whenever they're interested in working with New York Life. Obviously, the business units kind of have to raise their hand and say that they're interested in working with that startup. But once that's done, we try and expedite the process that it takes for a startup to partner with a large corporation. As you know, sometimes startups don't speak the corporate language and corporates don't speak the startup language. And so acting as that middle person is really crucial to ensuring that we're getting that speed to insight as fast as possible. And kind of one of our key strategies within business development is working with the FinTech Innovation Lab. So we've been partners of the lab for the past, I believe, 10 years, which is, you know, pretty strong commitment from our part and just great partnership in terms of what we've gained from the program. And really the key kind of value prop for us is being able to work hand in hand, mentor these companies that we know will have an applicability to our industry at some point in time. Might not be today, could be in the future, but being able to help them navigate through the kind of hurdles that it takes to partner with us always kind of has positive outcomes from a POC and commercialization perspective. So that's really what we're honing in on. And of course, if an investment comes from that, that's great as well. But, we've, as a New York Life has been around since 1845. So we're a big part of this, and we've been headquartered in New York the whole time. And so we're really just want to support the New York innovation ecosystem, and the FinTech Innovation Lab is one of the, best kind of conduits to that, that we've come across. So yeah, it's a little bit about us.
Thank you both. And I think just observing in this last cycle, the 2023 lab, you two were a great example of how this is intended to work. And there's just kind of the relationship and the chemistry. But maybe, Dina, you could answer this kind of to build on where you started. How do you engage through the program with the founders that you mentor? How does it work?
Yeah, that's a good question. So essentially the way that it works is we're part of the process the whole way through. So we start by actually reviewing the applications, looking at all the startups that have indicated interest and submitted their application. We look for a number of different things, which we can get into later. But once we kind of honed in on which startups we think match our kind of areas of interest the most, we will then be paired with those specific startups that we think we would like to mentor throughout the program. Once the program kicks off, all we're really focused on is helping that startup navigate through our kind of corporate stakeholders, right? So the first thing that we do is we get you in front of our CTO, who's able to provide that kind of 50-foot view in terms of guidance on where we could potentially take this opportunity, right? Because I might have, insight into where it could go, but getting that kind of guidance from our CTO is crucial. And so once he's kind of given that guidance, then we go and we set up multiple meetings with different stakeholders across the business. Obviously, we work with, and we did work with How So to really figure out what is it that they were looking to gain from the program, and then tailoring the experience that way as well. Sometimes people come in looking to understand the procurement process. Others come in wanting to understand what kind of security considerations they need to be aware of when partnering with a large enterprise, right? So depending on what they're looking for, we'll set up a variety of meetings that can help them achieve that goal with the premise of mentorship, right? This isn't like a sales opportunity as much as, we hope that it will get to that point at some point in time. It is really just helping guide the startup through that experience. And so we, the 12 weeks are really kind of a sprint, right? And so we're trying to get as many meetings set up as possible, helping them refine their product as much as possible, but it doesn't really end there. And, I think it's a good testament to this relationship, Marina. I mean, we've been obviously working together since the beginning, and we're now kind of working through a potential POC with How So, and that relationship is going on beyond the 12 weeks. So yeah.
That's great. Maybe I'll flip it, and Marina, let you comment too, kind of on the flip side from the startup's perspective, engaging with the FSIs. What was that like? What did you get out of it?
Well, I mean, I think here's the best analogy I can come up with, which is if you've ever been to a huge party where you don't really know anybody, but you have one person that sort of like takes you by the elbow and says, oh, just come with me, I'll introduce you, I'll make sure you have somebody to talk to. Like, that's kind of what the chaperones do, which is they understand the landscape of a massive environment, that is the enterprise, and they're willing to understand sort of what you bring, where your product might resonate, and then they make really warm intros. And the mentors who are particularly invested will sort of prep you in advance and say, here's what these folks are going to be interested to hear. Make sure you bring, enough information to speak to this point or that. And so, unlike being involved in the sales cycle with a big enterprise where you get your chance and you tell them about your product and you hope they like it, but if they don't like it, you'll never hear from them again. The mentorship relationship creates this dialogue where the whole point is open feedback. And so you're sort of getting these tailored, bespoke interactions, as Dina said, that address exactly what you're looking to learn. But it's live and candid feedback. So we would do a demo and have people go, whoa, you need to show it this way, or you need to say it this way, or that you need to have a better answer to that question, which nobody's going to say to you in a sales meeting, but we could take those back and get better so much faster as a team. And it's only because of the dialogue that the chaperones created for us.
Yeah. I love the party metaphor. I'm going to start using that one. And the other thing I observe is just kind of looking at it from all angles. There's just a lot of goodwill in the group. And as Dina kind of hit on, and of course, New York Life would love to find the next, rocket investment that's going to, bring a lot of return or transform New York Life's technology or your business somehow. But it's not really what you're driving for day to day. Is the kind of the feeling of the lab. It's like, we know this is a good thing, this grooming, this supporting this fintech ecosystem, the innovation that's occurring. And I think all of the companies engaged in that way. And it's not competitive between the companies. It's just an observation I've had. It's we're really just trying to help
It's a
make
safe
connections.
space. Yeah, it's definitely a safe space for everyone. And there are times where, I'll kind of tell Marina, like, I'm putting my mentor hat on now, right? Like, being able to differentiate the two types of advice that you might give someone, I think and she, the Household team, to their credit, like, have always been so exceptionally amazing at working with that. They've always taken that, of just been like, oh, okay, great. Like, we get that, we understand that. This is how we'll tailor it. This is so that kind of back and forth feedback was crucial to the success of us reaching a pilot, right, or a POC.
That's a good one. And maybe, go ahead, Marina.
Well, I was going to say too, I mean, each of these, at its core, success in the lab is about building good relationships. So there is honest dialogue and you can be open and transparent. I did feel throughout that there was a lot of sincere enthusiasm, not because they want to buy our product or they want to invest in our product, but these are folks that work at really big companies. And so, we had one, it was the CIO of a major insurance company. And he met with us like 3 different times. And he said, it's really fun to meet with y'all because you're just doing that. Like, you're the 25-person company that's moving fast. I just enjoy it. And that kind of sort of sincere and authentic engagement, where he wasn't doing it because he'd been asked or, because it was his job. It's in many ways, I think, kind of a break from the big company work that these folks have to do. And so when you establish that kind of rapport, the quality of the feedback and the investment is really top notch.
Yeah, I was gonna, you mentioned the feedback, Dina, and from your perspective, Marina, maybe just for the group, what are some examples of feedback you got either from New York Life or your other chaperones, just to get a sense of kind of the flow of that side?
I would say for us, one of the biggest challenges we face is that our synthetic data product can solve a lot of different problems. And that's good. That's a champagne problem to have as a business. But for a small team, it makes it very hard to focus on where we could find, where is the most compelling use case that is going to get people to, spend budget and precious technical resources to consider buying and deploying our technology. And so in the context of the lab, we were able to sort of display several different use cases and say which one resonates. And we got very clear feedback on that. I would say coming into the lab, we had some ideas that we were really excited about, and pretty uniformly, we heard people say, that's a nice to have, but I'll tell you what I would really use this synthetic data for. And so our whole approach really shifted over the course of 12 weeks towards the use cases that had more urgency around them. And there's no way we could have known that in the abstract ourselves. We had to get that market feedback to pick the right use cases to be focusing on.
Yep. It's well said, an important point. I think we always think about, even in in the Accenture's business, what our clients want, and then they tell us. The lab is about that your clients tell you exactly what they want, how they want it, or how they need it in order to be able to consume your solution within their organization. Right. It might be interesting to have, again, maybe some of your thoughts, Marina, on the other dimensions too. So we've talked a lot about the financial services institutions, the chaperones, but in terms of the executives in residence or the VCs that you interacted with, can you give a little flavor for that?
Yeah, I mean, they were invaluable, and a number of those relationships with the execs in residence have continued on, and we're still in touch with them. They're still feeding us ideas, and in some cases, making introductions that have led to sort of commercial conversations. I will say there was a point about a month from the end, 3 or 4 weeks from the end of the program, where I sort of freaked out because we had been so focused on developing the mentor relationships, which are primary, but you look at this long list of people you have access to, and we really hadn't made a big enough dent. If I had it to do over again, I would have figured out how to filter in more of that earlier on, because those relationships have been critical. But at the same time, we didn't connect with Jonah Crane, who's the regulator in residence, until the last week or two of the program. He's still helping us. We're in touch. He's gotten on calls with us. He's making us introductions into some of the regulatory conversations happening around AI right now. So it's luckily those folks are very generous, and a number of them have been willing to kind of go beyond. But it's an incredible slate of resources. The biggest challenge is finding time to engage with as many as you can and sort of squeeze as much out of it as you can in the course of the program.
Oh, awesome. So, that's probably a pretty good dive onto the program itself. And again, we'll open up for questions from everybody in a bit. But, maybe let me turn it for a minute to get perspectives on the application process. I see some pings in the window. I know, Morteza, you're hitting some of these, but from your perspective, Dina, could you share priorities you're seeing as a, large insurer, financial services institution, and any kind of advice you'd give from an applicant perspective?
Yeah, so I think the main kind of things that we look for from an application perspective are a couple of different factors. So the first is obviously, what is the product? What are you working on? And specifically, what's the kind of product market fit, right? So what are you targeting? What's your key demographics, your key, your kind of vision, your strategy, and how do you actually plan on getting there? So painting the vision of what you kind of see for the future, I think, is really important to kind of see where you're seeing yourself. The second kind of element that we look for is why you're differentiated. So there's obviously so many different startups out there doing so many different things. And a lot of the times people struggle with actually articulating what their true differentiation is. And so I think from our perspective as someone at New York Life Ventures who looks at, I have startup demos and I speak to startups all day. That's my main job. And so I have really good insight into what's out there on the market, who else is around, what do they do? And so I think as you're filling out your application, just kind of keep that in mind, that these folks really understand the ecosystem and they know what's out there. And so being able to highlight specifically what makes you different, I think, is a key thing, because that's always going to be the first question that comes to mind, right? It's like, what makes you different than this one or this one? And so just kind of harping on that point is crucial. And then I think the final thing is, or I guess two more things. One, the second to last thing is team, right? So, what team do you have in place? How are their skill sets complementing each other to help you reach your goals and achieve the vision that you've set out? And if you don't have those team members on staff right now, who's your ideal candidates, or who are your ideal types of skill sets that you need to bring on to help you realize that goal? And then finally, from a New York Life perspective, I'm always looking at the applicability to us as an organization. So, what kind of use cases could we actually engage with? Is there applicability today? Is it something that's more kind of 10 years out into the future? All those things do play into the feedback that's given, and kind of how we score who matches. But at the end of the day, I think the key focus is, like, once you've narrowed down on the top 30 startups from the pool of applicants, the startups come in, we'll do a demo day where they're able to do kind of a Shark Tank style, full day presenting a more in-depth look into what they're looking to build. And the main thing to note is that no startup will get into the program unless someone has raised a hand and said, we are willing to to work with this startup. And so that just makes the experience so much more powerful from the startup perspective, because you're opting into something where you're not trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, right? It's like someone has already indicated that interest and is willing to go through the process with you. And so I think that matchmaking is just, it's unparalleled in terms of any other accelerator that I've seen out in the market. And my background comes from the accelerator world. I used to work at a number of different programs. And so that is my experience, my expertise, and just the amount of kind of intentionality that happens when it comes to those kind of matchings and those pairings. It's you'll get a lot out of it just by being, going through the whole process and the demo day and all that stuff.
Awesome. So differentiation, team, value proposition, and specificity of use case. I think that's an important one, so that the financial service institution can really see, like, what would I want to do with this company. Marina, so how so was successful at each step of the process? Obviously, application was down selected to the list of 30 or so. You came in, you did the pitch day and the demo after that. What was that experience from your perspective? And again, advice to those who might go through it.
Yeah, I mean, I think a key, it feeds off what Dina said, but orient yourself around the problem that you can solve for the people who are on the receiving end of this pitch. I think, we have really cool technology. I am sure you all have cool technology too. And it's really tempting to want to give a litany of all the features and the functionality. That forces them to do the work to figure out, is there something of value here? And so the closer you can get to being able to lead with that and say, here's why, here's the problem in your life or in your company's operation that we are going to solve, I think will help set you apart from a crowd of folks who are all saying, like, look at this amazing thing. I think it is a little bit like a speed dating process, right? And so because I understand these companies are evaluating what technology is relevant and potentially valuable to what we do, but also it is a relationship that you're going to have for 12 weeks, and so they're going to want to see, I think, engagement, curiosity, self-awareness. It's not the time to do a hard sell and hope that you'll walk away with a contract. It's the time to demonstrate a really clear desire simply to partner together and learn a lot over the course of 12 weeks. I think that's going to resonate better with those who are evaluating you as a participant.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, it's a lot of like EQ as well, right? Like, you can have an amazing company and have an amazing product, but being able to understand that this isn't a sales pitch, right? And
right,
really focusing on building that long-term relationship. I think that's really what set,
right.
I think, How So and New York
Right.
Life apart, is like, just, between myself and Marina being able to really meet each other where we're at and just be candid. And I just think that the relationship building aspect, I think, is a crucial component to success of a startup. And so I, just focus a lot on that. And even if it's a relationship with a person who you weren't necessarily paired with, right? It could be another chaperone within the program. Like, maybe they didn't raise their hand initially, but continuing to see them at the networking events and talk to them. I mean, Marina, I think you made connections to other chaperones, even post program. And so I think just maintaining that level of going into it knowing that you're there to build a relationship with as many people as you can will always result in positive, I think, outcomes in some way, shape, or form.
Yep. Yeah, we have an active POC right now with a financial institution that was not our mentor. And I think a number of other conversations that have sort of continued to spring out that may lead to something. But again, it all goes back to the lab nexus, and it's not necessarily the places where you expect those to come. So it's good to be not to take a transactional approach, and which is very hard in a room. You're in a room full of all these technology buyers, and you desperately want to sell your technology. So it's hard to take a step back and just say, here's what we're looking to learn. Here's what we really care about. Here's what we think we're good at. But we want to have a conversation over the next 3 months about that and learn from your teams is, I think, the right approach.
Spot on. I think really well said. So probably a good point to open it up, and we can just take any questions. I'll kind of welcome Morteza in here as well, who's you've already met through the chats, and thanks Morteza, as well as Katie Stone, who really lead the lab day to day for us, and have answers to many questions that will probably stump me anyway. So yeah, to the entrepreneurs, welcome to jump in, and anything you didn't get clear on, clarifications.
I still have one question about the time commitment, and I think that's a good one to start with. I think there was a response in the chat that said about 70 to 80% of your time. And I know that sounds like a lot, because I suspect many of you are sitting there saying, I don't know what I would give up to free up 70 to 80% of my time. And we felt that for sure as a team going into it. And during the course of the program, it was sort of like, oh my gosh, we have to put everything on hold just to do this. But ultimately, we made that decision. I think the lab felt almost like a full-time job for me, and we did everything possible to push non-critical things out beyond the lab, including vacations, because it is sort of this fast and furious pace for 12 weeks, and I know that is a little daunting, but we would do it again in a second without hesitation. But it was our team is mostly in Raleigh, spread out a little bit in North Carolina. I made, I don't know, probably 5 trips to New York, 1 to DC during the course of the program. Others traveled some, but I was spending material amounts of time every single day on lab related stuff.
Good. Morteza, anything we've missed you think you want to highlight?
There is a question from Anukesha in the chat. Is there any specific goal milestones that the companies are expected to reach by the end of 12 weeks? Any thoughts on that, Marina, Dina? What are good indicators of success by the end of the program?
I think like from our perspective is like seeing some sort of growth or like learnings being kind of implemented, because you're going to be collecting feedback from, if you could be matched with up to 4 to 6 mentors, right? Or chaperones, sorry. And so, I think the matching process, like you're going to be getting a lot of things kind of coming at you in different forms. And so being able to just see how quickly you're able to tailor your use cases, kind of take that feedback, ask a lot of questions, those kinds of things are inevitably going to kind of push you to reach whatever goals and milestones that you're setting out. But initially just being clear, like what are the goals and milestones that you want to achieve, right? You have this captive audience of 4 to 6 chaperones that are ready to give you kind of like unfiltered advice in a way. And so what do you want to do? And what does your availability look like, right? Like being really open with like just how, like what you're kind of bringing, to the table, and kind of what you're willing to do in order to get that kind of unfiltered feedback. Like, I think it's a really important, like we recognize that there are a lot of people who sometimes aren't based in New York, right? And so just being flexible with like being available and, even if it's virtually, I think is just a good, it shows commitment, right? Yeah. And so I think that's what we want to see from a, chaperone perspective. We want to see that you're committed, that you take good feedback, and that you implement that feedback and kind of, tailor it accordingly. So that's the crucial thing for us.
Right. See, we have a hand up, Regina.
Hi, have you admitted any startup that has essentially a proof of concept demo and doesn't yet have users essentially?
Yes, absolutely. So we have a breadth of startups that get admitted to the program, and it really depends on the topic, where you are. If you think you're solving something interesting for financial services institutions, whether you're insurtech, fintech, enterprise tech, and on the other end, we have asset managers, banks, insurance companies, a slew of different, corporate function topics, etc. So if you think you're doing something interesting, we'd highly encourage you to apply. And we have startups that are Series B in the program, and we have had startups that are like seed stage, right? So we actually have startups where folks have been working out of their garage. If you think you're doing something interesting and you think it's relevant, then we encourage you to apply.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions?
There's some questions in the chat. I would encourage the folks to just unmute themselves, come off video. This is a good moment to kind of like, connect with us and ask your question.
But go ahead, Grant. I see you jumped in.
Yeah, I noticed that you had on your list of areas of interest, there was like 7 different areas and, a broad list of different topics that the various FIs, et cetera, are interested in. Is there any more granularity? Because I know it changes year to year where kind of the broad interest is. Is there any more info on kind of prioritization of any of that? Or, there's a larger group that are more interested in this area versus that area, anything like that?
Yeah, I would say if you're thinking back to that page, those are not specifically in a priority order, although I would say we did list Gen AI first, which that was, kind of the clear dominant theme that everybody was interested in. And then, it started to vary from there. So yeah, I know it's a bit of a broad set of topics, but again, this is about innovation. So, something that's not on that list, but is maybe something some of these companies haven't thought of, certainly is welcome.
Yeah. And I would encourage folks not to try to kind of reverse engineer how the scoring happens, the priorities. If honestly you think that, having done this for years now, if you think what you're doing is relevant and interesting, you should apply. And from the moment you apply, you start getting exposure, because the scoring is happening by folks who are decision makers in this space, right? And then if you get invited to the February event, there's a lot of conversations that happen. You get feedback. You're in front of, like, we host three different rooms of Shark style, tank style events. You start getting exposures, and a lot of times we make offline connections as long as they're coming from the financial services institution requests. Those priorities are culmination of 40 plus institutions, right? And they're anonymized at a very, 10,000 feet level. And at the end of the day, we have to select certain things to highlight. But that doesn't go to say like the other areas are not important. And what you do at the end of the day, once you get selected, is spend time with your target customers. So one question that has come up quite often in the chat is, how do you manage like the 70% capacity commitment? Welcome, Marina and Dina, to talk about that, especially Marina. How did you do it, right? A lot of times it's the founding team, but for your particular case, you kind of came in and you took that lead. So you can talk about like creativity and how you saw your cohort do it.
Yeah. So what you're actually doing with most of the time is the meetings themselves within the mentor institution. So for example, Dina, her job is, we would have meetings periodically with just Dina, but we would also in those meetings be saying, here's what we're learning, here's who we think we need to be talking about or talking to. And then she would go off, find the right meetings, set those meetings up, and then bring us, into meeting after meeting after meeting with 1, 2, 5, 7 people within her company. And we were doing that. Of course, we had 5 mentors. And so the sort of volume of meetings where you're basically getting in front of a new group of people within the enterprise, you're giving them a demo and a pitch, and you're trying to get as much feedback as you can in real time. And often, we would end the call. We would say, okay, we learned 3 things in that call. We need to tweak this in the demo. We need to create a new piece of collateral that addresses this. We need a new slide in our deck that talks to this. And so then the team is turning around then and trying to sort of ingest and act on that feedback as quickly as we can. Most of the companies in our cohort had the CEO or the founder doing almost everything from what I could observe. Our team's a little bit bigger than most of the teams in the cohort. We had about 25 people. We had the luxury of involving a broader group from our team. Our chief product officer sat in almost every single meeting. We had a sales engineer to do the demo because we wanted her to get the feedback in real time. So for us, we really treated it as sort of, we had like a core lab team that was about 5 people, and we were always working together in different arrangements to sort of spread the goodness out, because otherwise all the feedback would have been coming to me, and then it's my job to distribute it. It was better for us, at least, to let more team members get that in real time. But I mean, there would be weeks we'd have 5 different meetings to prep for, and then have, follow-up activities, all that stuff. So it's just it's a really fast, it's sort of a fire hose of meetings and feedback in a good way, but it's time consuming.
Yeah, and I would add, like Steve, myself, Katie, the rest of the cohort, Maria from the Partnership Fund, there's a lot of support to make sure you're successful, and we will work with you, having seen this being done in different models, especially if you're a larger company, to find a creative way where you're not, losing other things that you're working on. But we really, really think that what you would be doing is the program offers you to do it in a much faster, more efficient, more impactful way.
Yeah.
We have another question and maybe a couple more. I know, Marteza, you said if we need to, we can stick on a few more minutes, but Prakash, go ahead, jump in.
Hey, thanks, Steve. Hey, thanks, everyone. This is very informative. Really appreciate you taking the time to really educate us on this. This is the first time for me going through an experience like this. So I really appreciate it. My question is really simple. I'm living in the moment. So right now, application time. So a few questions related to the application. Looks like it saves automatically every time you fill it out. The question is really related to the feedback on the application itself. You mentioned in the chat that you're open to giving feedback. Now, does that happen after I hit the apply button, or is it at some point in the time you see it and we just get on an email? How does that work? And
Yeah.
Lastly, just Marteza, quick, will you send us a recording of this and some list of FAQs coming out of this session?
Absolutely. We will send you a recording of it, and we will share some content and everything that could be helpful with FAQs. If you are looking to get feedback, we encourage you to apply as soon as possible and drop us an email, so that way we can get back to you. We will look at all applications that gives us more capacity to do that earlier, to really help you put the best application in.
And so will I have an opportunity to edit it after the feedback, so it doesn't get locked?
Yes, we'll unsubmit it and you'll make changes.
Wonderful, thank you. Appreciate it.
Welcome.
Good. 2 minutes left. No more hands. Any last questions, comments from anybody?
A quick thought around what's happening right now, right? Like, you're in the stage where you're deciding whether you should apply or not. So most of the audience on this call is potential applicants. And if you decide to apply, we're just an email away. A few tips, just to get the application right. We would recommend spending some time. Roughly, the application takes about 15 to 20 minutes, but making it like a little more customized, incorporating tips that Dina and Marina gave, and also just making sure that it is very much targeted towards folks who are going to be scoring your target customers. Generally, the folks scoring have a generalist profile. They might go and get a specialist in your domain area to score you, but we would recommend kind of making it as simple as possible, leaving the jargon out, really customizing it to financial services institution. There's an opportunity to share a video, which is mandatory. We recommend that you have a customized video for this particular program, and also just cover what is it that you're trying to get out of the program. The scorers do the scoring during the holidays. They go in, probably spend about 5 to 10 minutes in application. It's really fast. They're extremely senior and seasoned individuals. They're somewhat very familiar with the problem, so we'd spend more time on the solution versus really the problem. We wish you the best of luck with that. Again, we're an email away, so happy to answer any questions that you might have.
It's good advice. All right. Well, why don't we wrap it there? Again, encourage you to apply. We'd love to learn more about what you're doing if you think it's a good fit. This really is a unique and special program, and hopefully you got a good flavor for that through today. And look forward to meeting many of you days to come.